My name is Brent Stabiner, and I am a Business Central consultant for Logan Consulting. In today's Business Central demo, I will be showing you accounts payable. So with accounts payable, we start with our vendor setup here. These vendors can be entered manually or imported via a configuration package. So let's open up a vendor just to show what that looks like. So every vendor is going to have a vendor number. That vendor number can be something automatically generated with a specific numbering series that you specify. You can provide your own numbering system, or you can use the numbering in your current vendor setup, or you can just manually enter whatever vendor number you would like. The vendor number is not. It's important for the system to be able to identify vendors instead of by name. They just get a code. But in your case, in the user case, the vendor number is not that important. You do not need to memorize it. Anytime you search for a vendor somewhere, you will be able to search by the name, the number, or other factors as well. So a few things I wanted to show on this vendor setup screen. We can block vendors for payment or for any transactions. So maybe you need to put a vendor on hold because they're not paying or because they're being unresponsive. So you can do that, and any new transactions for that vendor will be flagged. We can set up purchaser codes just like salespeople to assign to vendors. Over here on the right, you can upload a picture if you would like of your vendor. This little fact pane here in the details provides some great statistics and document information about the history. Any of these blue hyperlink numbers, I can click on the 490350 and I can see the entries that make up that balance, the two entries here. Here I can look at, so if a vendor maybe calls an AP clerk and has a question about it, you can bring up this vendor card right away. And from there, I can go to, posted invoices, and they can mention their invoice number, and I can find that, oh, you said 17201. Let's, I can then navigate to the actual documents and review it. So, yeah, this fact pane here is very useful. Not only can you see these details, but you can actually attach documents. Maybe you have a contract with that vendor, or maybe you have their W-9. You can upload as an attachment here to easily reference, as well as links maybe to their website or notes that you take when they call. A lot of cool features just in this fact box pane. And then as I scroll down here, just a few things to point out. There's the address info. You can set up contacts within a vendor. So, you might have different vendor contacts with different email addresses. Maybe purchase orders for certain items have one contact, but other items have another. So we can create those contacts, and you can assign them at the invoice level. We can set up taxes if that's something you want to track. Here are the posting groups that have been mentioned in the general ledger section. So the vendor posting group takes care of the credit side, the AP accounts, as well as a few other generic transactions like discounts. And then the business posting group here is where you can set up, the purchase account, the cost of goods sold accounts, purchase discounts, purchase credit memos, all that. A few other things to point out. We have payment terms here that tells us how to calculate the due dates. We can do the generic, 30, 60, 90 days. You can also do discounts. So maybe you have a vendor that gives you an early pay discount if you maybe pay within a week. So those payment terms can apply for that as well. And when you do payment check runs, you can have it look for those discounts as well. You have payment method code here. So this is just a way to tell how we pay the vendor. So we might have checks and ACH. And so that's useful because you can not only run reports and filter by that payment method code, but we can do check runs, and you can do one check run for your actual checks and one run for your ACHs. And that payment method code is a good way to separate the vendors out, so you don't have a payment batch with both checks and ACH payments. We can also utilize a vendor priority. Maybe we only have a certain amount of money that we can pay for a check run. Maybe we only have 10 grand. We can use the vendor priority to say, hey, pay the most important ones first. We could also use the priority. Maybe you have vendors that are high priority that you want to pay right away, and so maybe every day you do a check run for your priority vendors with a priority 1, and maybe once a week you do the other priorities. So that's a good nice feature there. And then as we scroll down, we get things like shipment method and location codes if this is a vendor that we're going to be doing purchase orders with. A few other things on this vendor setup here. If we look at navigate here to bank accounts, if this is a vendor we're going to pay via ACH, we can set up vendor bank accounts here that include, you just need a code, their account number, and their transit number. But you might have, there's more information that you can keep track of. So here's the bank account transit number. That's what will be included in the ACH file. We can set up approval workflows. Maybe new vendors need approval from a manager before we can start paying with them. So we can send approval requests for those new vendors. An approver would then get an email saying they need to approve it. And once it's approved, then you can start processing transactions for that vendor. Yeah, so that's the vendor setup. Pretty straightforward. Most of that information would probably be available in your current ERP system. So once we have the vendor set up, we can start processing transactions. Always going to be more than one way to navigate to those. I can search for purchase invoice, for example, and find that here. It's also in this purchasing menu here. Also from the vendor screen, I can hit new document and actually just create a purchase invoice for the vendor right here. And so when I click that new invoice, it creates this document from scratch. So you'll see here, it puts in the vendor number, and I said you don't have to know the vendor number. I can type in, the name instead, and it comes up. I can even type in like Atlanta, and it would show me my Atlanta vendors. So vendor numbers are not important. You can always search by other criteria as well. When you click that vendor number, it brings in all the setup information, the address. The document date is from the system date in Business Central, which is 9/24. It calculates the due date based on the vendor payment terms, which are down here. And then vendor invoice number is required. So usually that paper invoice you get from the vendor will include an invoice number that you enter there. And then down here in the line item detail, this is where you would actually say what you're purchasing. Now, you might be part of an organization that doesn't really have inventory, it doesn't really have items that they purchase. It's more that, they have invoices that they need to code, and that's that. You don't have to set up these items here. You don't have to, if you see here, this is like a furniture distribution company. You don't have to have all these items set up. What you can do is you have other types here. So we have GL accounts. So if all you care about is having a vendor with a balance, coded to the right account, we can choose GL account here and do something like advertising. There's our advertising expense. And we can, just do a quantity of 1 and a, price of 500. And so that's a $500 invoice that gets coded to advertising expense. So that's probably going to be the most likely way you do it. You can also purchase fixed assets. So you can create a fixed asset card and purchase that fixed asset, so that purchase price gets included in the acquisition cost. There's also charges that you can set up, these item charges. And that's a kind of a way, maybe instead of having, maybe your AP clerk is not very familiar at all with their chart of accounts or doesn't have a bit strong, accounting background. You can have them select items instead, where you give it a name of, advertising, or something, and they choose that. Or maybe office expense is too generic, and so you have these items that are, purchasing, pens, purchasing, keyboards, purchasing things, and all point to the same GL account. So those are your options there. And then once you have that stuff entered, you can preview post it. And what that'll do is it'll show you the GL impact of this transaction, or not just the GL impact, but the impact of the entire transaction. So we had tax information set up. That's why you have the tax entry, but there's a vendor ledger entry here. So all your purchase invoices will go to the vendor ledger entries, where it's a document type invoice assigned to the vendor with the amount over here. There's also a detailed vendor ledger entry, so that will include the initial entry of the invoice. This also gets updated if you're when you apply that invoice to a payment. And then there's the GL entry here. So you saw, remember I chose the advertising expense account. Well, here it is right here, being debited, and the credits of the account 2100 comes from the vendor posting group. The vendor posting group came from the vendor. So that GL stuff in the back end is done for you. Once you, again, we can set up approval workflows for these, but once it's ready, you can just go ahead and post it. It puts it to a posted purchase invoice, so you can always come back to this invoice and see how it was entered. And again, I can go to vendor ledger entries here. And if I can see that $500 invoice right here at the top. It comes right over here, and that's how we know we have the purchased invoice. If we scroll over to the right here, there's actually a column here for open, so I can filter to the open ones, and now I can see which invoices are open. So this vendor ledger entries is very useful for if you're an AP clerk. So now that we have an open invoice, we can pay it. That's done in a payment journal. So journals, from a high level, are where you enter transactions. There is actually a purchase journal as well, where you can do very basic. You don't get that whole purchase invoice screen, but you get a very similar screen where you can, pick an invoice. It would automatically give you a document number, and you can choose, your vendor here, and this again would just be one line entry that includes your vendor, and put your balancing account of the GL account. So that's another way you can get purchase invoices in there. And with this scenario, this is more of a row column scenario, but always gonna be more than one way to do a transaction. But once you're ready, you actually can only do the payment journal. You can only do your payments here in the payment journal. So let me delete what's here. So payment journal, again, like I said, these are printed. So let me just post these to get rid of them. So this journal here, it looks like a lot like that purchase journal. I can go across this and fill it out manually. Maybe I only have one check. You would choose your vendor here. The document type's payment here instead of invoice. You can choose your vendor. You can actually skip the amount. Your balancing account would be a bank account because you're paying out of there. And then here I can come hit my apply to information here. And when I choose invoice, it shows all the invoices that are filtered. You see the filter symbol for that vendor, and I can go ahead and choose which one I want. Now, in most cases, you're probably doing pay runs, once a week, maybe twice a week, and that could be dozens, that could be hundreds of invoices, and we don't want to enter those manually. Business Central provides us with this suggest vendor payments, which is very useful. At a high level, all you do is enter some criteria for this payment run that you want to do, and you choose whether it's a computer check or an electronic payment, and away you go. So just a quick breakdown here. So you can enter a date here, and it's going to look at due dates on or before that date. So I just did one far into the future to capture everything. You can specify, hey, I only have 10,000 for this payment run. You can use vendor priority, where you specify, I just want to pay my highest priority vendors. And then down here, I can choose that I'm paying out of my bank account. And here I can choose computer check or electronic payments. And here's that payment method code I was talking about. We can filter out, to check and just say, hey, do this check run, but just for my check vendors. And then you can do, an ACH run just for your ACH vendors. And you can enter other filters here on your vendor. It doesn't just have to be the payment method code. You can, find vendors at over $10,000 balance and pay them. And once you're ready, you click OK, and it goes and looks at all the open invoices and creates payment lines for them. So it fills in everything for you. It filled in all the apply information. It's computer check. So it's very useful. And then from here, you just print the check and then post it. Your check format is set at the bank account level. Business Central comes with the generic formats of, having the stub on top or in the middle or the bottom or having the check in the middle, top, middle, or bottom. You can have 1 or 2 stubs in any order. And it also, Business Central also has the Micker fonts available. So you just need a laser printer, and you don't need a check stock. You just need blank paper, and it will print the Micker line on the bottom. That concludes, before I conclude, I just wanted to show some reports here. So if I go back to vendors here, there are some generic reports that come out of the box with Business Central. Vendor trial balances. You can run an aging report here, and you set your aging buckets here at the aging report level. So if you'd like to see sometimes you like to see maybe 7-day periods, and other times you like to see 30-day periods. So here I can let's just do a 30-day. You can age it as of today, or age it as of today. You can age by the due date or the transaction or document dates. And then these reports, I can send it to Excel. I can put it to a PDF here. And so if we look to a PDF, we have our aging report here with the 30-day buckets and broken down by vendor.